from the heart of Dubai, where tomorrow is being built today to the world. Welcome to the CTO Show with Mehmet. Here, we redefine technology and reimagine possibilities. With Mehmet, delve into the riveting realms of AI, cybersecurity, and digital technology. Experience the thrilling highs and lows of startups. Immerse yourself in the spirit of entrepreneurship and witness the future of business innovation being written in real time. Now, without further ado, let's tune in and explore the future.
Hello and welcome back to a new episode of the CTO Show with Mehmet. Today I'm very pleased joining me, Elona Lopari. Elona, the way I love to do it is I keep it to my guests to introduce themselves. So tell us a bit more about you, your experience, and what you are currently up to. So the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Mehmet. I appreciate you having me on your podcast today. What I do today is I help entrepreneurs and CEOs scale a purpose-driven company that aligns purpose with profits so they can do more good in the world. How did I get here? My background, I come from a corporate world, 13 years, climbed pretty much the ladder in a retail, Fortune 500 retail industry company all the way to the C-suite level until I realized that that was all there is. I wasn't happy. I wasn't fulfilled. And I started looking for something else. And that's kind of where entrepreneurship showed up for me. And I took the leap and I have not looked back. I've now been an entrepreneur for 5 years and followed my purpose and mission. And really the biggest thing that wakes me up in the morning is to ensure that I get to multiply the purpose and profits of companies, especially when they have a great service. I specialize in the service space that really adds value to humanity and makes this world a better place.
That's great. And again, thank you, Elona, for, the time with me today. So, whenever I have a guest who did this leap from, corporate world to entrepreneurship, and, you just mentioned some of the motives, I would say, for you. But you must also have noticed something common between people who struggle actually, not necessarily to leave their secure jobs, but sometimes to start, any business. And what I'm, you know, wondering is how much, in your opinion, working on personal development, like trying to get to know what's happening beyond us, like as we say, um, going and trying to think outside of the box and think from different perspectives. So how, doing all these things affect such decision coming from like Fortune 500, corporate world to the entrepreneurship. So I'm really curious about, like not only the motives, also the motors that like usually drive for you, and what you could be like also an inspiration for people who would be listening to us today.
Yeah, I love your question because I really feel that question is very personal for everybody in their journey, depending on kind of where you are. For me, it really became very natural or obvious, so to speak. Kept hearing an inner voice, which is now I know was my intuition, that kind of told me that this is the end for this type of path and season in your life, and there's something new opening up. Obviously, that came with lots of anxiety, lots of uncertainty, lots of trial and error, lots of staying, where I was for much longer because I didn't know how to take those next steps. I didn't know how to move beyond my comfort zone, move outside of something that I knew for over a decade. And I had defined a lot of my identity around the work that I was doing. So, some of the beginning steps that I took to kind of slowly piece those puzzle pieces together was just expose myself to other people that I felt really inspired by and connected with, which were entrepreneurs. And the more I kind of lean into things that I really enjoyed exploring, the more I started to find the right mentors, the right people that were in my spaces, the coaching and consulting space called me. Just like piecing a lot of those information together and just investing in myself. I've been part of many programs, many things that I felt were going to be really the catalyst to my transformation, especially that early beginning. I remember for the first 2 years, I was very uncomfortable. So many feelings, so many, fear-based stuff that showed up. But I think the one thing that kept me very kind of staying in the journey was that every time I would ask myself, is this the right path for me? I always get a yes. So, and it was very clear to me at all times. So that's kind of what led me and kept me really grounded, I should say. However much you could feel grounded when I felt like I was always in the air because there's so much going on and uncertainty that I hadn't really wasn't used to. I felt like my foundation was shaken. But I try to stay grounded with meditation practices and a lot of other practices that help me, connect with self and figure out some of the things that were holding me back so that I could overcome those 2 years, beginning 2 years. I realize now that a 2 year period is really a good time frame for like a big change in your life, because it will take time to, go through the emotional experience, the physical experience, all the things that I had to learn, the education, the gaps in the skills, the gaps in education, all of these things, even though I feel like a lot of my experience obviously was all stepping stones to what I'm doing today. Nothing is ever wasted. However, when you go into a new thing, there's always new opportunities for exploration.
That's fantastic. And it's very good you mentioned some of these practices, which might be very helpful for people, because, for me also, I always wondered like how they have succeeded to do it. And we tend to think that it's just like happens overnight. And you just mentioned something very, I would say, crucial for people to understand. So sometimes it's like good things needs time. So you mentioned like 2 years, right? So to just kind of be, you know, calibrating yourself with that. And this is, what you do today, I believe, help CEOs and entrepreneurs and, under the umbrella of the Life School to building legacy purpose driven companies, which is, something for me very important. So I know you talk about like the 7 foundational pillars for building purpose driven companies. So can you walk us through these pillars and how they can contribute to the success for both the business and also to fulfilling this personal itch, I would call it, to keep the world a better place than when we found it.
Yeah, thank you for your question. I realized very early on that I'm one of my gifts is very strong in operations, and to me, even though I obviously understand there's other things in play to grow in a company, I still feel like it's fundamental. It's timeless principles. Companies have been built, years and years, and history. There's things that we can learn from history, right? And companies that have gone through the stages of growth of a physical company, which actually mirrors a lot of human growth phases. So I've kind of just studied, my field for many years now. It's going to be 20 years because even obviously where I was working, I was in those leadership positions. So I could see the bird's eye view of how everything worked together, how a big corporation was able to, put everything in harmony so that obviously the operations could work, the culture could be healthy, everybody working on their same vision, mission, values, and then you can grow and continue wherever you are in the phase of growth, which is, again, I want to mention the phases because it's really very relatable to most of us, right? I mean, you are a newborn when you just start a startup, and I know you have a lot of startups here. And then you go to toddler stage, right? And then you become a preteen, then you go to teenager, then you go to young adult, then you go to mature adult, then you start aging, right? And that's kind of where companies need to innovate. So it mirrors a lot of the human evolutionary process. And what I've also found is the fundamentals that make a company work, and these have to all work in harmony together. Otherwise, you have one missing piece in the company, and you can move the owner outside the company so the company can become a well-oiled machine, a simplified process, or big entity that's independent from the people that are actually in it. So it's the branding, it's the marketing, it's the sales, it's the systems that are required, and the team. And these are the main fundamentals that I also utilize when I help companies scale. And when you understand how to connect all these dots in the company, ensure that all of these are working together in harmony, that's where you can have a company that is going to be self-led, it's going to be sufficient on its own, just like a human, right? It's going to be independent on its own. And then also it's going to generate cash flow. which is such an important pain point or problem for a lot of companies, because that's usually the main issue that we have as we scale, because we take money and we reinvest it back in the company. And a lot of times there's a lot of misinformation around what problem should I solve at the different phases of growth. And every phase that you're in, whether you're startup from, growing into young adult, into mature company, all the way to decline, you focus on different things. And I realized there's a lot of gap between like the big picture, which has always been one of my gifts, to take a look at the big picture and then map out the dots for companies to ensure that this is the right priorities to focus on right now that are going to move the vision and the mission of the company further faster. So that's kind of the way I look at it, and my holistic approach to how I able to add value with my experience.
That's fantastic. And it's good you mentioned a couple of things here, Elona, because of course, the goal of any business is to generate revenue. And this is regardless if they were VC funded, were bootstrap businesses, whatever. And some people, they get stuck in thinking about, okay, so I'm on a purpose, right? But at the same time, I need to have profit for my business. And they kind of live a dilemma of, how I can balance so I don't compromise my purpose and my vision with things that I need to do to increase my revenues and the profit of the company. So from your experience, like how entrepreneurs can align, these two together, the purpose with the profit and revenues.
Well, thank you for your smart question. And the concern is very real, right? Because even when I kind of entered into a lot of this personal development space and understood how much there is a correlation between our human journey and the way that our companies grow, I had the same concerns. I'm like, well, great. I mean, I love my purpose. I love why I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm very clear as to kind of why I do what I do and why it's important to me and why I feel like everything that happened to me kind of set me in this path to be able to, now take what I know and be in service towards others. So that's kind of what I realized is the key, but also aligning that with the material metrics, the pragmatist approach of, okay, so when I, for example, speak about, training, my team, inside a company, everything that I'm training around, every topic that, I'm training my team around has a direct correlation to a metric, whether it's going to increase your employee engagement scores, whether it's going to increase your retention, whether it's going to increase your sales directly, whether it's going to, help you save money with your bottom line. Everything that we do on more of the theory side, which seems like more of a like theory, should have, I should say, and that's my job, aligning it for companies, right? So should have a direct correlation to some of those results that we traditionally are used to hearing about, when it comes to the business world, right? The P&L, the bottom line, the cash flow, retention rates, engagement scores, all these things. So everything that is purposeful can absolutely be connected to that. But let me just define what purpose means, at least kind of what I have learned in my journey. It's really being clear as to what is the service beyond yourself and your company and the way that you're contributing towards a bigger cause. It's the reason why that's important to the company. And also the third thing is ensuring that the daily operations or the day-to-day activities in the culture always align with those values and that vision and that mission. And I know that that's the third one is the challenge because it's not a linear process. You're going to have days where sometimes your purpose gets questioned because again, you might be in the fear mode mindset of, okay, I got to make this decision because I need to pay my payroll, for example, right? So, I mean, I get it. Those are the things that we deal with every day. But I think when you want to problem solve and be conscious about your decision making, when you look back and you make that, big strategy or you kind of focus on the big map as to kind of where is your company heading, it's very important to sit back and be conscious about the decisions that we're making, especially the big decisions that obviously going to have a higher ROI, so that they all align with that. Because just like you said, Mehmet, it's so easy to just make a fear-based decision, because a lot of things in companies are not even under our control, right? Our economy can affect us, advancements can affect us, new people in the market can affect us, and all of that. So I think it's important to stay very loyal, which takes discipline, commitment, but also devotion to the purpose of why the company exists. And it's a daily practice. It's not something that you just like do once and you're like, okay, exercise over. Now we can move on to everything else. I think it's just to being very conscious. And my latest book is on conscious leadership. I think being a conscious leader is really, really important, especially in the new world that we're transitioning into, and the way that we're all understanding how old systems no longer work. We're heading in with the new and technologies. It's obviously it's a major catalyst to a lot of the changes.
I 100% agree with you, especially on the steps. And actually, I like, the way the answers are in line with the flow that I planned for today, because, being conscious leader and, understanding what's going around. So one of the things, which I think it's in the old book, right, is, of course, the business needs to grow, right? And when the business needs to grow, we need to hire more people. And one of the things which I discuss with many people here on the show and even outside, the founder or the founders, right? So they have a mission critical, in my opinion, is, this vision, this passion, this purpose that you just described, right? So they need somehow to spread it within the organization. And one of the things that I always wonder, and I ask people the same question again and again, just out of curiosity to see different point of views, I would say. And really, because I am after this answer, because I know there's no one right answer to that. I would describe you, Elona, what happened. So the founder is purpose driven. He or she, they are very, passionate about what they do. They are, on a mission to do X, Y, and Z. And at some stage they need to hire more people, and when they hire these more people, so traditionally they go by the old book. I said old book, okay, so this guy was fantastic in the previous company. He grew their revenue from $1 million ARR, I'm just making up the numbers, and he took them to $50 million ARR. So let's hire this guy. And then they bring this guy, and this guy start to, I would say, not follow the culture, the vision, and they bring their own playbooks into there. So how much here the founders or the entrepreneurs, they need to make sure that when they bring new blood into the company, they need to make sure that this purpose, this big goal that they started the company, because it doesn't fade. And why actually it fades, in your opinion? I know it's a loaded question. Excuse
Wow.
me for that.
To me, that's a very clear answer. I don't know. To me, that's very clear, because leadership, I believe, is all about being diverse, and understanding other people's perspectives, and understanding that people have experiences and gifts that we don't have in our company. So the fact that somebody else comes from the outside with obviously their own experience and their own playbooks and their own ways that they are used to doing things, that's a topic for conversation, an open conversation. Here's what we value here. What do you value? Can you bring to the table? I feel like it's always with team. I think that's actually where we need to elevate, because we're kind of used to just managing people, right? Micromanaging people, be like, puppets. Like, you got to do these jobs. I mean, I worked in HR for many years. So everything is like, you got to do this and that. And then we train robots. Well, that's no longer the need of the new world. We have AI for that. So now it's going to be more about open conversations. What can you bring to the table? Here's the main goal that we're both working towards. What is it that you feel, you can add as value? And then me on the other end, I come up with my own. So it feels like more of a collaborative agreement, rather than here's how we do things here in that rigid structure, and anything that you were kind of bringing in from the outside, it just doesn't work. You have to learn our ways. I think that's a very rigid, small mindedness approach. I think that you will strive by just opening up that conversation and leveraging their experience, because I'm sure you can learn a lot as a leader, as a CEO, from other people's experience. And I feel like those are the smartest, the wisest, the more conscious leaders, where they understand how to honor other people and honor their experience and empower them to add their own value to the mix. Because at the end of the day, we live well, we should understand that with humans, we're all very authentic, right? So somebody else can bring in another amazing set of tools, talents, skills, gifts that you don't even have in your company. And the fact that you stay so rigid to some of the things that you have, I think it's almost like having clear boundaries, but not really rigid like structures within the company anymore. I don't feel like that serves anyone. It's more like staying fluid with, here's the boundaries, here's what we value. What else is it that you can bring to the table? I've always been more of a fluid approach type of person, a holistic approach, where I see people as assets, and I always want to understand where they're coming from, listen to them attentively, and then come up with solutions that work for both parties and set up win-win situations, and then do the follow-ups and then continuously improve the process. At the end of the day, I feel like I've seen that over and over in so many ways. And the companies that are most successful are the ones that know how to leverage and nurture their talents and are not so rigid in the, policy procedures, like all these old stuff that no longer works. Because I find that if humans feel valued and heard and seen, you don't need to micromanage a lot of the processes that we learned with old policy procedures or operating standards. Humans are self sufficient. They want to do well, they want to add value. So let's create the structures and the spaces where they can do that. And you'll see every other metric go crazy, because they'll take accountability. They'll do all the things that we've been wanting our teams to always do: high accountability, performance management. One of the two things that I was known for my company was building top talent and then turning low performance into high performance. And I've done it on the same structures, meaning the open conversation, bringing people to the table, honoring people for their differences, valuing diversity. All those things I think are definitely very, very healthy to implement, and it's going to add to a very healthy culture overall and to the growth of the company at the end of the day.
Fantastic. Like this is exactly the answer I was looking for. Uh, you kept repeating, a couple of times the old world and the new world. So what's happening? I mean, what is the drive for this change? Why things are changing? Is it like because of the technology advancement? Is it because socially, we humans, we reach a point which is not like the same that we were on a couple of years back? So I'm curious to understand from you your vision and how, from your perspective, this new world looks like, especially from entrepreneurship perspective.
I love that you mentioned that. I think it's two factors. One is absolute technology, but what did technology do? Education. I've always been a proponent of education. We have more information. We understand our human experience better. We understand there's so much more stuff at play. Education's out everywhere. So I really feel like the education piece is why we have reached here, and we're able to now level up, with other things that we understand are important, which maybe prior generations or me like 20, 30 years ago had no clue that these things even, were here. So I think obviously, higher forces are working in our favor, but just like human evolutionary process of the way that humans have evolved throughout the years, there comes a point where every generation wants to improve, right? So every generation wants to get to the new level, and that happens sometimes fast, and sometimes it takes years to go through this. So I think all the changes in technology have brought on upon education, and when you teach a man how to fish, they can fish for life. So the more information there is out there, the more people sharing their experiences. I mean, the power of technology, the fact that we can do this together here, somebody else can get access to this information. They can connect their own dots in their journey. And this, I think, is the biggest reason of the catalyst of the change between the transition of the old world into the new world is education. People have more information, and more information opens up more awareness, and more awareness opens up new levels of insight. New levels of insight open up creativity. New levels of creativity open up intuition, right? And we understand that we're limitless as humans, but all these come with understanding how our human experience works and what other factors are at play. Sometimes I look at life like a game, right? It's like almost like a game. There's no reality, right? It's all the physical perception because I love neuroscience, so I have my master's in it. But when you look at how all these components work together, I think we just, as little humans, we're very tiny dots, and when you understand there's a big whole world out there and so much happening, you really do realize that you're probably just living your life taking it too seriously. So the more we understand, the more information we have, the more we can make conscious decisions. Because at the end of the day, the results we have, the lives we have, what we're seeking, which is fulfillment, happiness, right? Connection. That's really all there is when it comes down to the bottom of the timeless stuff. It's really around, understanding where are some of our decisions. But obviously, when you make a decision, unconsciously, or when you're sleeping, I call it now, right? Because now there was like people sleeping and people that are awake. You get those results in your life, and that becomes the sum of your life. So I think it's education all the way that has caused the catalyst of the transition.
Absolutely. And, I like, the philosophical aspect, if I might use this term, to what you said, because it's like maybe like, okay, of course, there are people who think like it's simulation and all this, and because we mentioned like a game, but it's really, when I sometimes, reflect on the fact that just like 50 years ago, let's say, people could not do something similar to what we do currently. Like, we live different continents and we're speaking in real time, and which is like, and we see each other. So this is like, kind of a science fiction if we encounter now someone who used to live maybe in the 50s in the last century, right? So they say, no, what are you talking about? Like, this cannot be true, right? So plus the other thing is awareness, which you mentioned, and this awareness, which, hopefully, this is my hope and it's my purpose actually, is to use this education that exactly the I like the expression about, education and how it can change us for the better and for the good things. And then you mentioned something about connecting the dots, and, just the term itself, it always hooks me. But I know you talk usually about connecting the dots backward. So what do you mean by connecting the dots backward? So
Yeah.
what is that exactly?
Yeah. Thank you for asking that. It's the name of my first book. It's Connecting Dots Backwards. It came to me through obviously a moment of inspiration. And I realized that in order for us to build for the future, which is the visions that we have for where we, what we want in our lives, right? The purpose behind the reasons why we do things. The only way, obviously, for us to operate under that and take inspired action is the present moment, because the future is not here yet. So we have the present moment. But then, in order for us to gain insight and learn the lessons that we need to learn and to make more conscious decisions, we also have to look at our past. And we have to combine all three when we kind of want to have a bird's eye view to kind of, our life as a blueprint overall, so to speak, or even any area of our lives, because there's a lot of knowledge and information through our past, our origins, wherever we come from, our families, right? Are the people that we hang out with, history. There is so much information and patterns that we could be learning from that we could use in the present moment that will help us become more effective, conscious beings and humans in the way that we make decisions. That I feel like, unless you understand how to do the dots backwards, you're just still have a very limited view of kind of where you are. However, I believe that obviously innovation and creativity and the limitless potential also lives in the future, right? So it's almost like an art of kind of connecting all those three dots between your past, your present, and your future, and then always working in this dance in life and this flow, so that you're always again going into your future, honoring the vision that you have, honoring your intuition, and all these things that you learn along the journey. When we all equipped with a lot of that information, but then making those conscious decisions from the inspired action in the present moment, but never forget to go back to the future and realize how to the past and kind of understand the patterns so that you again become a more conscious decision maker in the present moment, which again, taking intentional steps in the present moment will lead you to that future vision. So it's almost like a process that works in harmony with each other.
This reminds me very much of the very famous speech of Steve Jobs when he delivered the commencement at Stanford University, and he was mentioning about like connecting the dots, right? When he was young, and the reason this, when what you just mentioned also as well about the future. So because it's about embracing that whenever something happens, and especially entrepreneurs, you just mentioned it, also at the during the introduction. So it's not an easy path, right? So it's something which can have challenges, obstacles. So I think if we accept that sometimes if things happen, it happens for a reason. I know I'm going a bit philosophical again here, um, but it's kind of part of the process. And then once you understand that, you know, this can come back to you in the future, so the complete perspective changes. And this is what I want to link to something people. I'm not sure if we miss it sometimes or do we forget it sometimes. The intersection between, of course, what we just talked about, like the purpose, but from business perspective and our own success. So we might have a very successful business, but still, some people, they say, you know what, I feel like I'm still having something missing. I need to do something more. And uh, I'm not happy, with all the revenues are very good. Everything is fine. It was my mission. It was my vision, but I want to achieve something extra. So what do you think is the reason for that sometime that happen? And is it like something which is a little bit more related to, again, some, I would say, missing to take care of self while putting all the energy in the business? What's your take on that?
I think your soul is calling for change. Every time we feel like there's something more, it means that we've already fulfilled that cycle. We already learned the lessons. We've grown in that. If it's the business, the channel for that, then that's what it is. For me, it was my career. For somebody else, could be their health. For someone else, can be their relationships. For other people, can be their wealth. So I think it's natural process. There's a beginning and to an end to certain phases of growth. Growth is not like ever eternal, right? I mean, in different areas. So when a cycle closes, that means that you are ready for the new thing, which is why we feel that those inner conflicts. And we judge ourselves. We're like, well, why? I mean, that's what I did in myself. Like, I have a successful career. I'm like, I have the American dream. That's why I moved here to the US. By the way, I'm from Albania. I moved here 15 years old, the oldest child with my parents. So that was the American dream was my North Star that I was supposed to be chasing. So I think, you'll feel it. Like I now know to predict the stages of growth, even internally, personally. When there's the old cycle that already reached a certain level, it closes and you feel like there's something more. You feel unfulfilled. You feel unhappy. This is one part. And the other one is go within and figure out what are but this information leads you to go within. So I think we need that on the outside. Some people do get it from the inside. Most people is from the outside because it's easier to kind of have outside circumstances dictate our growth, unfortunately. I think it's going to flip, but right now we are here. So kind of have that realization and then go within and figure out, okay, so what could be now my next phase that I want to go after? In the case of entrepreneurship, maybe, you're no longer happy with where you are with your company. Maybe you want to grow it. Maybe you want to diversify it. Maybe you want to go public. Maybe you want to transfer it out to other people, right? There's so many options. Maybe right now you're feeling called to travel. Maybe right now you're feeling called to explore yourself because maybe you have put so much energy into your baby, which is your company, and that has already served its purpose for that stage of things of life that you dedicated your time and energy to it, whether it's 10 years, 5 years, 20 years, 30 years, it doesn't matter. I think we all have our own individual timelines in life. It's not what society thinks it should be. So I think we have to listen to that. And that's just a great insight to something new is on the horizon, and embrace it. Don't push it away. Because black is going to stay there and it's going to haunt you until you listen for it. So that's what I've learned. I'm like, okay, I'm going to obey.
Absolutely. Yeah, if we feel like we need to change, we need to go and do it. No matter what happens. I know some people, um, they get stuck in some kind of fear, I would say, or maybe they don't want, to be in kind of uncertainty. Um, and then they just pass it. But I've seen a lot of people who regret it, actually. I talk to them after a few years and say, okay, you had this idea, you wanted to do it, or you were doing this in your startup and you always told me you wanted to do another thing and you never did it. Oh, I get stuck. I didn't have time. So, all of us, I mean, at least I can speak about myself. Sometimes we do this, right? So we keep postponing things and just try to find any excuse um, to do it. But yeah, to your point, if it's calling, it's calling, and we need to obey it 100% on this. Really, I'm enjoying the conversation. But if we want to, kind of wrap it up and leaves the audience today with some couple of advices that you want to give them, what would that be?
Yeah, I wanted to go deeper into the deathbed test. We all have heard about it, right? Oh, what happens? You want to, do you really want to have regrets when you're at that end of life, physical life? Because I believe, obviously, there's other types of lives. But anyway, in the physical life, the deathbed test, it's always the regrets that haunt us the most, just like you said, right? So I think it's live our lives like that every day. If something is calling us, I know it's every process, new growth process starts with fear and uncomfortable feelings. But I think what happens is that the more you do it, the easier it gets because you just build momentum and resiliency, and that becomes your value. My value before I ventured as an entrepreneur was security and certainty. God forbid that I had to do anything that was risky. But what happens through growth and evolution and all of that, and putting myself purposely and sometimes not consciously through certain things, I realized that, okay, my new value is just every day I'm going to grow, every day, growth, growth, growth. And that becomes your new value. And that becomes easy because that you value that. So every time you stay stagnant, you're going to feel it. And you're like, nope, this is not me. I'm going to continue to grow. So I think you just build it within yourself. There are certain obviously decisions we make, and sometimes when we get those insights, it's kind of scary because it's so new and out of the blue that we have no evidence in our lives that would back that up for the logical left brains like myself. We're like, oh, I don't know, I don't have any, making decisions out of just straight logic and all of that. But I've learned that, yeah, to minimize the deathbed test, which is the least regret that we feel. I don't know if we can ever feel 100% regret free because I think we're human. I don't think there's ever going to be, but at least the big things in life, you don't want to have those regrets. So that would be my final message. Live your life as if, you have pretty much answered all your callings. And when something is there, even though you're scared, just take a baby step towards it. And you just never know, what's the worst going to happen? You can learn something new by yourself because you always do. And I find that that's the biggest asset I have because the more I learn about me, the more I know how to put that in use towards others. So, and myself, of course, it's selfish and selfless. But I think it has to be selfish before it becomes selfless. I don't think it should go the other way around. That's why we have a lot of issues. And that's kind of how you learn. So that would be my final message. Just lean into the things that are calling you, the things that really light you up. We hear that, cliche stuff all the time, like follow your light, follow your calling, follow the thing, but really follow it because you have it in your path the way you have it. I don't. I have a different thing. So we all gotta, pay attention to those dots. Speaking of that, there's dots always being thrown your way. And when we're just living frantically, we just can't, we don't see them and we miss them. And then they become rocks and then they become a bigger thing. And then outside circumstances start wheeling in because you're outside of your path. You got to stay aligned in the path. And, that's kind of how you know that you're in the right direction because you feel at peace. That's how I know now. You feel at peace. You feel very good with kind of where you are. You feel grounded. And that is what I think most of us are looking for when we talk about fulfillment, being realized in life, having success, happiness, money, all the things that we were fed to value very early on.
Absolutely. I think this is very thought-provoking, Elona, and especially the part about selfish and selfless, right? That's what you call it.
Selfish and selfless.
Selfless, yeah. So the reason is because, I'm saying it's thought-provoking because we need to stop and, really think about this again. The reason I'm saying this because I used to miss it, right? So because I was thinking, oh, I should not be selfish, right? So and kind of this imposter syndrome. No, no, no. Like I no, no. I should. You start to have these fights inside you, and of course, but as you said, like you have these callings that you need to answer them, and as an inside, no, like it's not like selfish in the bad sense, of course. It's like taking care of myself, right? And being good so I can do good also to other people. So, and once you shift to that mentality, like good things start to happen. So, absolutely. Before, I ask you where people can get connected with you, Elona. I know you do public speaking and keynote speaking also as well. Anything planned in this part of the world any soon?
Well, I have a summit coming up, and I'm speaking about visionary, purpose-driven leadership here in New York. Actually, it's a physical summit. Women entrepreneurs are going to be part of that, so that's kind of my next engagement. But yeah, I love to speak. To me, that's my channel to share with what we just talked about, and that's exactly the definition of why I feel it's to be selfish, so that it could be selfless. Because we've seen the other way around, and it doesn't work, and you can't sustain it because you're going to build a lot of what is the right word? Resentment is the right word within yourself. And you just can't block that. You can't give that to other people. So again, it's like the face mask analogy of the planes, all of this self-care, all this movements around self-care and all of this. That's what it needs to be, right? Selfish, so you can be selfless. I think the problem becomes when it stays with selfish and it stays with the ego. That's where, you're driven by the wrong thing. If you put that on the other end, you have nothing to worry about because now you're giving them back. So continue the process, get to selflessness, and then just keep rinse and repeating a lot of the things that you'll feel like you want to share with others. That's kind of, what I would have to say about that as well.
Fantastic. Where people can get, where they can find you, get connected.
My website is my best hub, I call it. It's my home. I host a lot of stuff there, a lot of free resources for your audience as well. If you'd like to check it out, it's at elonaloparicoaching.com. And I also love podcasts because of the speaking, because it's a great channel to do this heart-to-heart conversation, talk about people's experiences. And I have my own as well. It's called the Life School Masterclass Show, which I would love to be honored to have you as a guest on as well. And I do the same thing there. I just have open conversation around personal and professional experiences that we have gathered throughout life. And if there's something somebody could share and you can connect your own dot listening, I find that would be the value of just consuming the podcast as well. So I think those two would be great next steps to just continue the conversation.
That's great. Of course, I will make sure, Elona, that I will put the links in the show notes if they are listening to us on any of their favorite podcasting platforms. And if they are watching us on YouTube, they can find this in the description. Really, I enjoyed the conversation. The time passed, I didn't feel it really, because I like these kinds of, as you said, heart to heart conversations, kind of a mix between uh, talking business at the same time talking humanity, talking little bit, I would call it metaphysical things as well. I enjoy doing this all the time. So thank you for, sharing your experience, sharing your thoughts, and, enlightening fellow entrepreneurs and fellow founders on, how they can find their purpose and how they can define it. So again, thank you very much, Elona, for your time. And this is how I end my episodes usually. This is for the audience. If you just discovered this podcast by luck, thank you for passing by. And thank you for doing so. If you don't mind, if you like this episode, like us on all the podcasting platforms, share it with your friends, and you can subscribe also as well. And if you are one of the people who keep coming back, thank you for doing so. I know that you always send me your messages, feedbacks, and comments. I try to answer as fast as possible. And please keep them coming. I read them all and I appreciate your feedback, whether you need me to enhance something, you want me to talk about something special, I would love to hear from you. Thank you very much for tuning in, and we'll meet again very soon. Thank you. Bye bye.
Hit that subscribe button, share the show with your tech-savvy friends and fellow entrepreneurs, and leave us a review on your favorite podcast app. Your support means the world to us.